Hey, good morning, Michelle.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited about this today.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. So, Michelle and I were talking before the call about a couple of things. And the first thing was, you know, there's still time to register for MedTech Startup School, the fundamentals of compliance. I don't know if all of you know about this program, but she's offered a free 4-week course. It's completely online. It has quizzes. It's very educational. Everything you need to know. And so we're going to drop that link into the chat. I want you guys to use the chat vigorously. If you go ahead and start by dropping in what country, where in the world you're calling in from, that would be great. Use the chat and the Q&A. For questions, use the Q&A, and for chat, use the chat. Um, and so we'll try to get to all of your questions during this call, but if we don't, we'll follow up afterward. Um, Second housekeeping note is those of you that would like a certificate of attendance, please drop that in. And then the last thing that she and I were talking about, and this is where we actually met, was in the medical device premium group, medical device group premium, which is a little known secret. They meet every Friday. And I'm going to drop the link in. We have a speaker every Friday. It's usually a small, intimate group, but we also meet every year in May in California for a conference, and that is a fantastic um, networking opportunity among really experienced professionals. And so this secret group that I'm going to drop in, I invite you all to join tomorrow at 11. We're going to have a speaker. Details are going to be in the chat. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Michelle.
Okay. Let me get in presentation mode here. Okay. So are we set with the presentation? You can see it. Okay. So today we're going to talk about medical device claims, staying out of trouble with the FDA and FTC, also known as you can't say that. So I'm Michelle. I have been in medical device regulatory and quality for over 20 years. I actually served a 4-year term as an advisor to the FDA's Good Manufacturing Practices Advisory Committee. And then I say I am a master grief counselor because, as the regulatory and quality people on this call go, no, you have to do a lot of grief counseling in regulatory to the rest of your organization, and especially your C-suite, that there are requirements even in the first place. And this is my executive team, hard at work, sleeping under my desk. So, um, so the different types of services I offer, people call me and they engage with me for anything, just hey, call Michelle or the lean team because I need to bounce some ideas off or ask some questions with strategy, to all the way to we can be your virtual regulatory and quality staff, from submission to commercialization.
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of people don't understand is that they think, oh, when we're going to hire a consultant, it's going to be this long-term contract or, and what's interesting about Lean or AQA is that it's really flexible service plan and, engagement from a very short, I just need questions answered to filling in for maternity leave or somebody's out sick, so don't be shy about contacting them. I'm going to drop that information into the chat about how to book a free 30-minute call. Give them a call. I encourage you to do that.
Thanks, Sean. So let's get into this. So those of you who see my presentations regularly, this one is very heavy on words and text because in a lot of these examples, the wording is important. So so bear with me as we kind of build on concepts here. So let's just start with the fundamentals that's going to give us the context to understand the examples that are written up in some of the warning letters that we're going to look at. So if we look at how the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act defines a label, it is, as you would suspect, any written, printed, or graphic matter upon the immediate container. So this is like the most basic fundamental level of that is a label. So if we think of it in context of the universe, now we're on this planet that is the label. But we expand that definition because the FD&C goes on to discuss labeling, which is a broader term besides that basic package or container label that expands it to any written, printed, or graphic material on any article, any container, any wrapper, and any material that accompanies the device. They go on to say that this can include things like posters, pamphlets, booklets, and that the term can be referred to as promotional labeling, and it even includes a company's website. So if we look at how the quality management system regulation is going to regulate the use of the word labeling, they stick with the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act definition over that of ISO 13485. And then some of the comments asked if FDA is going to clarify the term marketing in the context of label and labeling. And the FDA did not think that it was necessary to expand the definition to marketing because the FD&C Act uses the term advertising throughout, and that they feel like it's clear that it encompasses promotional materials, aka marketing materials. So now we see that our planet of the label has been demoted a bit and is a little bit more like Pluto. And it's dwarfed in the overall context and spectrum of what is considered labeling. But then when we think of what is label and labeling in the context of advertising and promotional labeling, it is synonymous with, advertising, marketing literature, marketing communications, and the regulations around these are somewhat vague with response to the medical devices. So if we look at kind of some legal definitions of advertising, it is the practice of attracting public notice. It aids either directly or indirectly to promulgate idea. And then it also results in direct attention to a business, product, or service. So now we see that we have label and advertising as a subset of that universe that has become labeling. And so at each one of these levels, we have to think about where our claims fit in to this system. And it's especially important to understand those basic definitions and what all they encompass, because if you don't understand and apply them correctly at the claims level, it could result in misbranding. Misbranding is if the device and labeling is false or misleading, which means it's not only untrue, but it's forged, fraudulent, or deceptive. Whereas the misleading could even just give a false impression to the reader. And the false impression could result from either you flat out make a deceptive statement or you fail to inform the consumer of material facts. So therefore, the label would remain silent to, like, for instance, specific consequences that may arise from a claim. It could also be misbranding if it does not bear adequate directions for use, or if it is over the counter and it doesn't meet the specific labeling requirements for OTC products. Claims could be considered unsubstantiated in the event that they are misbranding. It is important to substantiate your claims with data because this can possibly even lead to a reclassification of your product if your labeling makes previously new and previously unsubstantiated claims, or it promotes the device for purposes or conditions other than currently marketed similar devices. So if we go one step further from misbranding, it is adulterated medical devices. And there are several circumstances that the FDA can consider devices adulterated. Namely that it fails to meet performance requirements, good manufacturing practices, IDE, or it fails to conform to the requirements in a pre-market approval application. So we don't only have to think about the FDA when you think about how claims are regulated and where they're regulated in terms of labeling advertising. Because the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, is also involved in the oversight of medical devices claims. So the Federal Trade Commission is primarily responsible for the claims in all forms of advertising. And their main goal is to ensure claims that about the benefit and safety are truthful and not misleading and supported by science, whereas the FDA is primarily responsible for claims that appear in the actual labeling on the product, being like the package inserts, and promotional materials. It's important to know that the FTC and FDA have got a memorandum of understanding between them so that the two agencies work together when there is possible joint oversight to ensure that they go to the fullest extent feasible underneath both agencies. So who has jurisdiction for promotional labeling and advertising in that case? Generally, promotional labeling and advertising regulated by the FTC and FDA. The FDA will regulate or have primary jurisdiction over restricted medical devices, whereas the FTC has jurisdiction over non-restricted medical devices. So in the FDA, the Center for Devices and Radiological Health will take precedence, specifically the Office of Compliance. In the FTC, they will look mainly across all advertising for evidence of substantiation, deception, and if the claims are fair. They look at advertising if they fail to reveal material information, or they make unfair or objective claims with no reasonable basis. So the FTC, their goal is to prevent unfair or deceptive acts or practices. They actually have a very helpful health products compliance guide about how to navigate the boundaries of your advertising and what their expectations are. There are cases where both the FTC and the FD&C Act may apply. For instance, the FTC has got some guidances on mobile health apps for both how to handle data and how to market your mobile health app. And the FDA has got, probably a half dozen or more guidances around device software, mobile medical applications, general wellness, and more. So
Before
what
we
does
get
the
into
enforcement?
the warning letters, why don't we go ahead and launch the poll and give you a little breather? And while we're at it, just a reminder that if you would like a certificate, please go ahead and so we're going to launch the poll. I think it's just 3 questions. While that's running, just a reminder, please read the chat if you have questions. Yeah, if you want the certificate of attendance, please drop your name as you'd like it to appear on the certificate along with your email into the chat. If you have questions for what we've covered so far, please go ahead and start adding those to the Q&A. Don't forget to subscribe to MedTech Leading Voice at medtechleadingvoice.com and to reach out to Michelle for any quality or regulatory needs that you may have. No question, too small or too big. I've dropped the link for that in the chat as well. So we'll let this run for 30 more seconds. Michelle, nice to see you. We
Yes.
have a lot of people on the call, and I'm excited about that. Also, feel free to put in which country you're dialing in from, and because we like to know. And yeah,
I saw we've got the international audience today. That's awesome. I really appreciate you guys taking your time. I know it's like late for some of you.
um, so it looks like our audience is fairly knowledgeable about this topic, and that many of them have 11 or more products on the market. But we have everybody at every stage. So yeah, okay, good group. Thanks everybody for joining.
Mhm.
Back to you, Michelle.
Yep. So if we look at what the different enforcement actions look like between the two agencies, starting with the FTC can send warning letters similar to how FDA does. These are typically not quite to the level of FDA warning letter. They call out the problematic advertising and marketing language. And then they just require the recipient to correct the problematic advertising language within a certain period of time. They can escalate to include cease and desist letters and injunctions and restitution as well. Here is an example where a company received a warning letter because it was a treadmill company that said only components supplied by and installed by the company were valid, or to keep the warranty valid. However, FTC says, products sold to consumers, even health products sold to consumers, cannot make claims that you void the warranty for these kind of consumer-based products. So, and in this case, they decided that this was a violation of the FT&C Act. So they put them on notice, and in that letter, they had to correct the warranty situation and all their advertising, and likely had to revisit the customers that they had denied underneath that warranty requirements. So the FDA has similar mechanisms to communicate with problem companies. They can start with just a notice of violation, which is a little bit more informal process for a warning letter. The FDA can issue a warning letter with or without a prior notice of violation, depending on the nature of the offense or danger possibly to public health. So then it can escalate to the warning letter. These typically have stronger language. And then the FDA can take judicial actions that include consent decrees, injunction, and even seizures. They will issue a warning letter under the circumstances if you make a promotional claim that could be outside your 510(k) clearance, if you exceed the product's classification exemptions, if you promote products with unsubstantiated claims, or a previous warning has not been addressed adequately. So if we look at some warning letter examples, here's a company, A1 Engineering, that makes what they have listed as a therapeutic massager. And in this particular regulation, the intended use is specified as to relieve minor muscle aches and pains. And the FDA in this warning letter declared that it is misbranded because they are making claims that it's intended for uses that are different from devices that are legally marketed underneath that therapeutic massager regulation, and that further they are also adulterated because the labels and the marketing materials do not have an approved application for a PMA or a IDE, and it's not covered by an existing 510(k). So they're making all kinds of claims for about every cosmetic thing under the sun across their whole product line. They even get into, kind of some far out there claims that would be really hard to substantiate, like enhances biological processes, stimulate hydrolysis of triglycerides. This is a one-stop shop for all your health needs, lymphatic drainage, even sun-damaged skin, and it just keeps going on and on throughout all types of their marketing materials and all of their products. So in this warning letter, the FDA specifies for them to immediately cease activities related to the misbranding and adulteration, and to further cease commercial distribution of the devices. So, but here we go again. So that original warning letter was in November of 2015. However, in October of 2023, the same company for the same products and the same claims gets another warning letter. So again, the FDA says that they're misbranded and that they're adulterated because now they have a 510K that they put in 2018 that was cleared in 2019, and it was intended for muscle conditioning to stimulate healthy muscles. But they're right back to their old game, because now they're saying, yeah, well, we stimulate nerves and muscles, and because we do that, then that muscle contraction creates aesthetic beautification. And they're back to making all of the claims that they were before. The FDA goes on in the warning letter to say that changing these body locations and intended uses, the new anatomical areas, create a different risk profile than those that were cleared in the original body system, and that the multiple statements that include statements on the website, social media, user manuals, all are promoting the use of these systems on areas where they were specifically contraindicated in the 510K. So once again, they have to withdraw their product from the market, cease their marketing activities, and commercialization activities. So what can we learn from this warning letter? We have new anatomical areas that are constituting new intended uses that result in it being declared misbranded. They are not monitoring the claims or not caring about the claims on their websites or their marketing materials. And then, don't make the same mistake twice. And it also shows that just because you rectify a situation, it doesn't mean that the FDA is not continuing to look at what you're doing moving forward. So similarly, we have a different company, Celluderm, that is also trying to market underneath this therapeutic massager regulation, because the therapeutic massager regulation is 510K exempt. And the firm is, but they're making those same claims about, like, it's stimulating the lymphatic system, breaking up congestion, fat congestion. And they also get a warning letter similar to that of the A1 engineering, but FDA says, hey, your claims are exceeding the class 1 exemption, and therefore you're no longer 510K exempt underneath this product code. And then we see in a press release that FDA is actually taking specific and targeted enforcement area efforts against these types of products. And I have seen this across several different product types where FDA is considering risk to public health across different products that are being generally mass marketed directly to consumers, that are far exceeding what either their regulations or exemption criteria are. And so you will see, don't make assumptions that just because your competitors are doing it, that FDA is not also following and going to give warning letters to your competitors as well. So here's one of my favorite examples is Owlet Baby Care. So they get a warning letter in 2021 that indicates they have this baby smart sock that measures vital signs, including blood oxygen levels and heart rate readings, and it gives caregivers alerts about the condition of the infant. The FDA, they were trying to market this underneath a general wellness indication and have it fit within that guidance document. And the FDA said that this actually should be classified as a medical device, not general wellness. And therefore it requires FDA clearance before it can be sold. So let's look at how they were marketing this. They were marketing this across, a lot of different platforms, including Amazon, Walmart, Target, direct to consumer. They were making claims about all the different conditions it would monitor, that it will immediately notify you that your baby needs attention or to go to proactively check on your baby, because they were, again, selling direct to consumer. So since their warning letter, the warning letter says it does not fall underneath that low risk policy, and they needed to submit a 510K. So they submit a 510K and they finally get clearance in 2023. And the product is called Owlet Baby Sat, and it is prescription only. So here we have, a specific intended use that is not over the counter. It is prescription only. It was a 510K. It has a specific age ranges and weight ranges that are consistent, or specific indications. And then they also are for acute and chronic medical conditions, and the alarms are now set by a healthcare provider, and they're customizable to this patient population with these conditions. So, and this is what makes it one of my favorite. In the fiscal year and annual report for 2023, FDA actually kind of took a little bit of credit for Owlet Baby Care getting a de novo clearance after their 510K, because now they can sell it direct to consumers without the need for the prescription. And the FDA has got it itemized in this report as, hey, look at all these novel devices that we helped bring to market. And the way that they helped bring them to market was giving them a warning letter in the first place, and then they're taking credit for them going through the 510K, the de novo process. That entertains me. So what are our learning lessons here for the Owlet? General wellness cannot make medical device claims, specifically, for direct to consumer products. There could be multiple paths available based on your intended user population. And then the warning letter is not the end of the road. You could have several correct paths to move forward and get back in the good graces of FDA. And if you're lucky, they'll even give you a shout out in their annual report. So if we look at the company iRhythm, they get a clearance in 2016 that specifies in their clearance letter that this is for non-critical care patients where real-time monitoring is not needed. And it goes on to say it is not intended for use on critical care patients. So the FDA points out in this warning letter that this Zio patch system, the website for the iRhythm says that it is intended now for near real-time monitoring. And if near isn't a word made up by marketers, I don't know what is as a modifier. And they said it can provide notifications again immediately for high-risk patients. So the FDA clarifies in this warning letter that they have now added a new patient population, being high-risk patients that was contraindicated by their submission, and that these high-risk patients need actual real-time monitoring, not near real-time monitoring. And it goes on because the FDA has a problem now with their technology and the claims around their technology that because the technology actually has a transmission limit, and it has for transmitting the ECG and reporting to the physician. And when that transmission limit is reached, the device no longer provides that near real-time monitoring, and further, the directions for use are not adequate for the physician who is receiving these reports to know that the device has hit its transmission limit and that they're no longer getting reports and that we're not even near real time anymore. We're no time. So they had to immediately cease their activities that were resulting from the misbranding and adulteration. So all their marketing collateral. And then they had to correct the violations addressed in the letter, including the notification with the patients. So what can we learn from iRhythm? Ensure your claims are not inferring an additional patient population and not contraindicated with your device. And then watch for changes over time and maybe design changes, marketing collateral that could have larger impacts if you're not reviewing against your original clearance or approval requirements. So Sonovo production. This one gets in the Wayback Machine a bit in that they have a 510K that was cleared in 1991. It was under product code KXA for a 510K that was for a painful hip cup arthroplasty. That in 2019, they make a design change that where they did not obtain FDA clearance through a new 510K. And then subsequently in March of 2023, they get a warning letter because now they are saying that that this is instead of just a femoral resurfacing cup, that this is now part of a total hip system. And then in January of 2024, the FDA goes on to issue a public communication and press release to avoid using their total hip system altogether because of the significant modifications to the device that differ from those that were cleared in that original 510K back in 1991. So the warning letter specifies that these are misbranded because they were not to be labeled or promoted for non-cemented use. They were supposed to be for cemented use only. So this is again a different type of technology. And the FDA says any non-cemented fixation is considered investigational. Further, it has a coating for cementless fixation, again, a different technology. And that different technology is contraindicatory to that clearance letter. So they're also adulterated, and I think that this is interesting. The FDA went on to specify that they have classified this particular type of hip joint replacement as a class 3 underneath a different regulation and a different product code that covers this type of technology and fixation. So now not only did they not do a proper analysis of if they needed to submit a new 510K, they've put themselves into pre-market approval class 3 requirements by changing this technology in intended use. So again, they have to immediately cease the manufacturer and take prompt action. But in that year period between the warning letter and the subsequent press release, whatever action they took, the FDA did not feel like was adequate, because they feel like that they have to warn the healthcare practitioner community that these products are not safe to use. So, one of the lessons here is that the FDA never forgets. It would be easy to think, oh, who's going to go back to this clearance in 1991, and read that clearance letter and then give me a warning letter for this. So the lessons learned from Sonovo: always compare against your clearance or approved version of your device when you're making claims, and even design changes. Go back to that original source of truth. Understand those intended use of your device and the boundary of not only when you need to submit a new 510(k), but when you may be putting yourself into some other type of regulatory classification scheme. And misclassifying these changes as a letter to file can have significant consequences. So, some secrets to success. First, create a procedure for all your promotional content that includes your website, social media, marketing materials. Make sure it addresses who is involved, the change notification process, the change control process, includes your social media, where do the different types of collateral exist, and who is doing or responsible for that revision control. Review your original clearance and product code for indications and technology. Be aware that changing patient populations, contact durations, anatomical locations, general wellness claims, or getting outside of claims that could fit in general wellness, getting outside of specifications for exemptions, and not complying with recognized consensus standards in some cases, can all affect your claims and compliance. Don't misclassify design changes as a letter to file. You always look at the whole ecosystem of what's being changed. That includes the claims, the materials, your labels, labeling, advertising materials that might go with the change, changes to technology, adding software or app, and possibly even how your data is handled or stored. So create a procedure for all promotional content, including website and marketing materials. Review your original clearance indications and technologies. Don't classify your design changes. And then I have got a helpful labeling checklist to just act as a guide or a reality check to make sure that you look through the most significant requirements for labeling. So, Sean had mentioned my free 28-day course. If you want to do that, or even a legitimate deeper dive here, I have partnered with reps, and I have a 3-part series on how to develop a regulatory pathway assessment. So check that out if you feel like that would be helpful. Lots of resources on my website, and then we can take your question. Let me know how I could be helpful.
That's great, Michelle. Before we jump to the questions, I have a question. One of the things that I understand is that testimonials from that either show up on social media or that are on the website or can be problematic, that the FDA doesn't really trust testimonials and that they can be disguised claims. Any comment on that?
They can be disguised, not only disguised claims, but claims around safety and efficacy that are not supported. And you have to police your own social media, whether you wrote it or not. Um, you know, you can't obviously take down things that other people posted on their social media, but I believe it was fairly recently that the FDA issued a guidance or some other type of communication about how to correct misinformation. And like perhaps you can respond to those people on their own social media of like, oh, hey, the product's not actually cleared for that, it's cleared for this, etc. But yeah, they issued a policy recently for how to handle those types of situations. And they're calling it, misinformation.
So that's kind of a third category,
Mhm.
misbranded, adulterated, and then misinformation. And I
Mhm.
think that's pretty interesting. If we skip to the questions that were submitted, do the promotional materials for medical devices ha have to have the term restricted device on it if it is or not? Uh, uh,
They do not have to bear that term. That's just how that who's going to take jurisdiction first or primary will be decided if there is a problem with your marketing materials.
okay. And then the are these claims made during 510(k) submission or after device clearance?
It usually happens, it can happen both ways. The best way is that you submit your labeling and any claims in your 510(k) with the data. And then when your 510(k) is cleared, those claims are already validated by the FDA or, reviewed in some way, and that you will not get in trouble for them later because not only are they substantiated, but then they are um reviewed, and so you shouldn't have that issue of like, okay, I make a claim later, and even if I substantiate it, the FDA may or may not have a problem with it because they haven't seen it, and have I now implied something that I wasn't aware of after the fact.
Interesting. Is there a required 2253 form submission for devices as we see for drugs? I'm not familiar with that form.
I'm not familiar with that form either.
I
um
I assume that
you
it's a promotional form.
in devices there is or was once a specific form for indications for yeah, your indications for use statement, where you had to describe
Mhm.
that whole thing, and it was and including OTC, a prescription. But now I believe that form is generated by eStar. Like, it's not something that you have to create outside of the eStar format.
Okay, I love this question. Does the FDA randomly review labeling materials, or is there a standard process and all manufacturers are getting checked?
It's risk-based, as I mentioned. It could be something that came to their attention, maybe via an adverse event or a recall, or like we see some kind of product that is actually regulated by FDA, but is got some popular consumer applications where the FDA feels like, because they are that these types of devices are being marketed direct to consumers, that there's not enough oversight. So there could be, something political or risk-based, involved around what they look at and why. It could come up and your competitors could even turn you into the FDA as saying that, hey, they have unsubstantiated claims, or, this intended use is new or novel.
One of the things that I came across when I was researching this topic was the idea that if you're awaiting your 510K, you cannot start pre-selling the product. And so what this question asks is, if we have an IRB approval for an investigational device, can we promote the device for research purposes only, not for commercial resale?
That's a good question. I am not that familiar with the marketing requirements around IRBs and IDEs, but I don't believe y- your IRB, because that seems like that would be around recruitment, and I would think that that would not be a,
Right.
yeah.
That wouldn't be
I
a
don't know.
violation
Maybe
because
somebody can
you're
put that in the chat
recruiting,
if you know
because
about
you're
IRBs and marketing.
right. I think the main thing is that as long as they're not selling the product in advance of approval, that it's okay to
Correct.
talk about it. That's my
Yeah,
understanding.
you can't sell it, but and you can't even take orders for it.
Right, exactly. Um, well, this is sort of a general question, but what are the most common pitfalls companies face when making medical device claims, and how can they be avoided? That's kind of broad, but what are the most common things that companies get dinged for from the FDA, would you say?
Well, I think that once a product gets clearance, particularly if you did not have those claims and wording that you want for your advertising and marketing in your 510K, you're a marketer, Sean. You guys get super creative with we even just put in the word neither patient. Like, so I see that marketing people kind of get carried away and step outside of their bounds, and that those things don't go to regulatory to review, or marketing thinks, hey, my social media is outside the scope of, something that's regulated, or I don't have a responsibility if Kim Kardashian says that this helps her butt fat. Like, there's it could just be a slippery slope with marketing language and marketing personalities into and without that oversight of their regulatory team.
Which leads into this really, it says, while this may be hard to answer, what are your thoughts on the sufficient level of evidence for a claim related to patient comfort or increased confidence in clinical decision making?
You know,
Both of
I,
those things seem to fall into that marketing language
yeah,
category.
yeah. I would think that the patient comfort could be maybe substantiated, or both of them could maybe be substantiated by some human factors study or survey or something along that line. I think that wording like that is a little bit of a less of a slippery slope. Like you're making a claim about preference, but you're not going down that path of better than or or putting patient comfort in or with other words that change the intended use or
Hmm,
technology.
I understand. Okay. So it looks like we don't have any more questions right now, and we're about out of time. Anyhow, I would just like to remind everybody to please, please, please complete the survey, which is going to pop up when we close the window here, to go ahead and register for Michelle's um, courses, either through RAPS or her free course, uh, the MedTech Startup School. And as always, subscribe to MedTech Leading Voice. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me directly. And I'll be happy to direct your question where it needs to go. Hope everybody has a great day. Thank you so much for your time and participation.
Yep, thanks for your time. Bye.
Bye.